Here is why Apple's slow AI adoption is a good thing. Apple just recently did a Q3 earnings call. When Tim Cook opened on the call, instead of leading with AI, which you'd think would be an obvious thing to do, be it that AI is all the hype right now, what he instead did was that he led with liquid glass, which is the new design language that Apple is very hyped about or very excited about. Very interesting when you compare Apple to its tech competitors, is that they made AI be the second thing that they introduced at the beginning of the call. That's not to say that they're tone deaf. However, they understand, from what I could tell in reading the script from the call, that the market right now is putting their eyes on Apple to how it is that they're going to integrate AI into their devices. How are they going to integrate AI into their ecosystem? Tim Cook points to implementations that already exist with Apple Intelligence, as well as he points to some features that are up and coming. But I would definitely have to say, from my time following this narrative between AI and Apple and the wider market, that insofar as the call is concerned, it really seems, in my opinion, I believe that Tim Cook and Apple in this call are paying lip service to AI, mainly because that's what the market wants to hear currently. But underlying that lip service, there's actually a high degree of hesitation from them to adopt the technology quickly. And insofar as an online narrative, that has made Apple look outdated and perhaps maybe even laughable insofar as their approach to AI. But here's a question I pose to you. What if being slow to adopt AI is actually a good thing? And what if Apple is actually being the most pragmatic out of all of these companies when it comes to AI? What makes me ground my speculation is that Apple, not too long ago in June, released this article here called The Illusion of Thinking, in which they pointed out some distinct and poignant limitations on these models. Part of what they pointed out, one of the big summary points of what they pointed out, was that as the complexity of the problem that the model solves gets higher and higher and higher, eventually the models go from being able to be somewhat competent in solving the problem to a full and total collapse. I actually think they have the graphs here. Yeah, so if you can see these graphs, these are essentially like the different games that the models were set up to play. And as the complexity of the game or the problem that the models are trying to solve increases, you see these models just they completely collapse in terms of their accuracy. And what they compare here is between Claude 3.7 Sonnet and DeepSeek R1. This was released in June, so these models are somewhat older now. But the trend here is just this point of collapse insofar as accuracy percentage. Because of this specific factor, ultimately, the models can't scale effectively. The key thing with this is that from a public perspective, Apple is paying lip service to AI, but the researcher is showing that they have a doubt that these models are what they say that they are marketed to be. If you think about how Apple has approached product and innovation in the past, they are very careful, and they have always technically been. iPhone, for example, where touchscreen phones had come out before the original iPhone, and Apple always amplifies existing innovations. And I think that is their approach with AI. Because of some of the constraints that I mentioned from the research paper, I think Apple internally knows that the technology is still not mature. And because of that, it's going to be very difficult for them to rely on that immature technology to scale with their products and to be useful to the extent that they need it to be with their products. So whatever work what they've done with AI seems almost safe and light, only dipping their toe into the technology as opposed to diving in. Now, they do point out in the earnings call, they're focused on increased AI investment. But I would say the general sentiment, the general tone within that call was very vague. There wasn't a lot of exactness as to what it is that their focus and strategy is going to be. Tim even goes insofar as speaking directly to the fact that he doesn't want to say too much because he doesn't want to give away Apple's AI strategy. And in a way, I think that that's annoying, right? Because you want to know what Apple is doing with AI. But I think when the dust settles, Apple's slow rate of adoption might end up being what benefits them, because it could be that this level of AI is so unstable that the companies that have rushed to try to implement it will not be able to scale with the technology, and that those rushed implementations may come back to bite them in the butt. And Apple, because of their cautious implementation, will save themselves from that. If you're slow to adopt, one of the benefits of that is that when you adopt in a more full-hearted way, what you've adopted is a more mature form of that technology. And it could just be that we're really working right now with a beta form of AI, thinking that it's in its full mature form and building all these systems around an unstable technology. Other than that, if you're an engineer that's seeking to break into the software industry, or you're looking to transition into a new job, book a consultation with me below. I'll help get your job hunting strategy sorted. Otherwise, if you want to implement a job hunting strategy that is effective and works, but you do not have the funds, or you're a DIY kind of guy, I recommend that you watch this video right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.